Welcome to another episode of the Architecture of Health. I'm Deb Boyson, and this is Musical Breathwork. Here with me this week. Her human name is Brooke McPoyle. Welcome, Brooke.
Deb, so delighted to be here with you. Thanks for the invite.
The reason I invited you is that all my other lovely deep health nerds, I can't tell you, every week someone says, we got to learn more from Brooke. We know you lovingly as Musical Breathwork. And what I'm attracted to about your work is that you not only represent the deep essence of health that is timeless, which this show is all about, authentic, deep, lasting ways to become more whole, and the beauty and all that, the health that comes from that. But also you represent a feminine point of view that gets lost with a lot of gym and fitness influencers where the women are just trying to copy the men. All right. So, and what we usually start with here is thinking of our former selves and even thinking about clients we've worked with. There's often a design assumption, some sort of block that keeps people from finding the simplicity or investing in this new way of thinking where we can achieve a level of well-being and health and beauty that we never thought imaginable. So let's start back up one little bit. Musical breathwork, that is a special name. Let's start with how you arrived at that as your brand name.
Life is a musical. And if we can return to that musical state of mind, we can live in a state of merriment, mightiness, and harmony. There is a coherent field, and it's a matter of tuning into that field. And to tune into that field, we have to do the internal work to make our body tension and our breath rate, and all that is controlled from those two inputs. When we look at that like a musical instrument, because your voice literally is the most unique instrument in the world. There is no voice like yours. There is no cavity built like yours. There is no control between those little flaps that anybody has other than you. So coming back to our most internal state of what vibration is, what breath rate is, what body tension is how we recover that tune within ourselves. And to make life a musical would be like the greatest dream for me to restore that in each of us.
Holy cow. I love that. It's tapping. How do we tune ourselves to tap into all that is our unique place in the oneness of things, not a copying place or an external place, our very own place. So you said three things: vibration, breath rate, and body tension. I know your history. You were a competitive golfer. You were very athletic. What was your what were some of the aha moments where you arrived at this different point of view that I know isn't yet common in the athletic world?
Failure. Unfortunately, the greatest lessons often come with an extraordinary amount of pain. So I failed as a golfer. I turned pro after I played D1 for several years, and I had all the shots in my bag, but I was struggling with panic attacks when I was putting. Even though I was a great putter when I would practice, I really struggled. I'd be on the 14th hole playing the greatest round of my life under pressure, and I would get up to a 2-foot putt for birdie and miss it and hit 2 feet by, and then have another 2-footer for par and then miss it. And then, after that, you almost have like a little bit of post-traumatic stress. You get up to the next green and you're like, oh no, I need to hit this ball really close because I'm afraid I'm going to miss a 2-footer. And I became quite debilitated because of these. My coach would call it sabotage. She's like, what are you doing? You're sabotaging your round. And I'm like, coach, I literally can't control. I didn't know at that time I couldn't control my heart rate. So it made me an incredible driver of the ball, an incredible shot maker. I mean, from tee to green, you'd think I had, I'm in the top 100 of the world. And then I'd get on the green where you have to have very a nuanced and subtle touch. And I didn't know how to quell the nerves. So after I had like a very heartbreaking breakup with the sport, I had 4 friends die. So I went through this kind of existential crisis at the age of 21 as I had turned pro for 7 years. I was really lined up for going in one direction. And then every single week, I went to a funeral from a friend that I grew up with, my first boyfriend, my first kiss, the kid that was next to me every day on the bus. And at 21, you're pretty invincible. You're pretty like ready to take on the world. And like, you're not thinking about, who am I and what do I mean to the world and like what is life and what is death? Like those aren't, I don't think, the questions that you get to until you're older. And I was kind of shot in the face right to those. All I cared about was a little white ball for 7 years. I was kind of a spoiled brat, little golf princess, like my teammates, like just straight A's. All I care about was the sport. And I was spiritual. Like I had sat for like medicine ceremonies. I really questioned the norm of like what I call slut culture, like the and in college, you're in that. You go to the club with your friends, and I had a fake ID. I didn't drink. So, like, it was very fun to have a fake ID because I would just drive everybody home early. But then you're around this kind of like sexy culture and environment, and you're in these tiny little bodycon dresses. And I remember having kind of these like distended conversations with myself of like, is this who I am? Is this where I belong? I don't know how if I like this. This kind of feels a little weird. So even I felt like I was awake and aware, but when I went to this many funerals, it like kind of it threw me into another frame of mind. And I didn't have the tools at all to handle that kind of level of grief. And I did what everybody else around me does, and that's drink. And we play that story out. I ended up getting sick. I was a musician. I really loved playing to a drunk audience. So it was like it was a fun little chapter, but I was really disguising, I was numbing the grief. And I ended up getting so sick that I met this amazing doctor, Dr. Kevin Davin. He changed my life. We ended up getting married. And I was like, oh, he's a doctor. This sounds like such a great idea. And we got married. I ran his clinic. We quadrupled his clinic. And we had a lovely divorce. He was ready for kids and I wasn't. And that was kind of shocking for me. I didn't know who I was, but the clinic that we had built was based around education. And so every single day, now that I'm doing what I am now, I am so grateful for my ex-husband because he was part of my path. And he's in a very different place now after being with me. We lived in a teepee for a year and a half. Our marriage was a giant social experiment, really. We had a clinic called Pure Life. A lot of people called it a cult, but it was because we did detoxes together. We had a big community. We would meditate on Wednesdays. It was beautiful. So after I got divorced, I did what everybody does, and that's start a band and go on tour because the world was my oyster. I was 28 and I had no attachments. I was sleeping on my parents' living room floor in a state of depression and I needed rest. And they knew it. Every time I'd be like, I'm just depressed, they'd be like, you just need deep rest. Just stay here until you figure it out. So I became a golf cart girl because it was the only job I could tolerate. Wanted to be outside with nature, only work a couple days a week. And I somehow managed to make insane money when I was out there. I figured out how to gamble with the guys that would get drunk. So on hole 14, when the fairway is really, really tight, I'd say, hey, I bet for $20 I can outdrive you. And it's an impossible fairway for most people to hit. And I had this point like scoped out who the oldest guy was, who the shortest guy was. So I was like, I'll grab his driver. That's what I was doing while I was, I had the band, we were recording, we were touring, and then I was, at home just being a golf cart girl. And I hated the fact that there was just so much poison. Like everything on my little golf cart was poisonous. And I still had this like hip clip that was bothering me, but I had learned so much about the nervous system. I had been teaching breath for a decade. So getting out there and like, here I am on hole 14 and I'm like, all right, I got $80 on the line right now. If I can just hit the fairway, these guys will mess up and I'll make a nice little $80. So I really learned how to kind of how to kind of get ready for my one shot that was going to mean more. So it was like my one little gambling opportunity. And I started to kind of dial in this little sequence. And this little sequence, I wish I would have had in college. I wish I would have had when I was younger, because it allows you to leverage adrenaline. Adrenaline has a sequence that uncoils in the body between your breath rate, your heart rate, your brainwave tension, and your fascia tension. And when we start to train the body tension to be more relaxed, like prepared for this heavy duty dose of adrenaline, and we train the breath rate to drop, that adrenaline becomes like nitric oxide for your system and it opens up your presence. So, really, it was just like a sequence of failures. I ended up hurting myself. I hurt my foot. It was standard plantar fasciitis. And I went to my naturopath and I'm like, Bernie, I got something wrong with my foot. And he goes, no, you have a fascia problem. And he squeezed my calf and it was like my foot lit up. And that's all he said. I ordered 5 textbooks on fascia. While I was on the golf cart, I was reading these textbooks, highlighting them up, trying to figure out like, what is this fascia thing? How do I work with it? I started researching my 28 options for fascia release, realized I could only afford like 4 of them. To go to a rolfer, I was going to be kind of stuck in their sequence. It was like kind of joining a new chiropractic office, but like kind of twice as expensive. So I kind of started to what do they call it? Deconstruct, take apart each of these 28 methods. And I'm like, all right, what's the overlapping theme? And I've made myself my own little baker's recipe. And some of the release methods I argued with as I was reading about them. Every place that focuses on global pain spot, I would force my brain to read it, but I almost had already discarded it because as a webbing system, and I don't know if this is just my artistic brain because like I painted a lot. I don't know if it's the way that I see color is a little different, but when I started getting into the cadaver videos, when I started to really dive into like, okay, let me just see it instead of looking at their diagrams, instead of just reading what they're saying, let me try to figure out how this meshy material is actually creating like viscoelasticity and slide and glide and shear. And that's where a lot of our imaging models still fall very short. Is like you can run an ultrasound and yeah, it'll let you see dysfunction in the fibers, but like sometimes you can run an ultrasound and it looks perfect, but there's still issues there because the gliding is wrong. So as I started kind of turning everything over in my mind, I started asking a very different question. And that was, how do we untie the densifications without ripping anything? And that was the question that kept me up at night. And I really had a breakthrough when I started playing with models. And anybody that gets into fascia, it's like you need to build your first tensegrity model. The first one that I did was Project X. It teaches you so much to wrestle, you have to have 2 people. You kind of like wrestle things into position. And then you're like, wow, if our whole skeleton is based on this tension point, the upper body's just mirroring what's happening in the lower body. And as a golfer, all my momentum and leverage is lower body driven. So it is so in my perception, in my proprioception, in the knowingness of my body that we're in like for me to hit a 250-yard drive, I have to coil my upper body with a locked hip basically into a position. And then I have to move my weight to the other side and then use that, and we call it a rubber band. So here I am as a 16-year-old golfer talking about fascia as rubber bands when we didn't know we were talking fascia. So you spiral through the spiral line of the fascia, you spiral like a gastropod, like you're spinning your shoulders around an axis, and then you're trying to keep your lower body as stable as possible before you release it. And uncoil was the word that we would use. That was a trigger reaction from the lower body. So as I started to get into fascia relief, the athlete in me argued all the time with the techniques that were out there. Cause I'm like, well, what about the feet? Like, what if the pinky toes go offline? So what happens? What's the cascading kinetic effect when we are walking with our weight on the outside of the foot? And I had the privilege of working with the original inventor of the PEDAR system, which is big in athletics. If you've ever seen, it's like a weight disparity. So you kind of stand on this mat and it gives you like a heat map of where your weight goes. Those are called a PEDAR system. The original one cost like $150,000 to build. My dad was one of the original investors in the creation of that product. Now you can, for $400, buy one on Amazon. and it pops up on your phone. Tech has come so far. So it's my dad and my grandfather are both scientists and experimenters in their own right. My dad's in industrial coatings, but an incredible golfer, shot 62 twice. And my brother was a pro. He ended up being an LPGA Tour caddy. So between the three of us at home, having this kind of like competitive mix, we were taught this. It's called a kinetic chain or the kinetic link system, which is very avant garde. It was developed by Michael Bentley, and it's an equation of how to create torque in your club head from lower body movement. And this equation has like existed in me since I was 15 years old. So when I dove into fascia, I did what all my coaches taught how to do, and that's deconstruct the best out there, rearrange it to fit your practice mechanisms, and then repeat until failure. So after I think my 500th session with clients, with fascia flow, I filmed it and then released it. But there was a pretty significant shift when I combined it with this. I call it the mighty breath. The breathwork practice that I made is very different than what the standard breathwork out there is. It's a shaped breath, and it gets you very into the nuance of your respiration field. And the reason for that is if you're a touring singer and you have, you're going to be on tour for the next month and you're going to be singing 28 days out of those months, and it's a smoky bar and then a yoga studio and then different humidities. You have to get really in tune with how to clear your nasal glands, how to keep your adenoids in your tonsils not inflamed, how to get your muscles prepped without taking a lot of time and also minimal equipment, because you only have what your backpack can carry because your van's already full of instruments. So I built a 10-minute sequence for singers to use. When I added fascia flow to that, there was a significant change in my clients. Their brain waves would drop, their things changed, and here we are 2 years later.
Wow, Brooke, what a great story. I've taken so many notes here. Yet I'll start with the last thing you talked about, fascia flow. I bought your program and could see the nuance. The whole movement world seems to be throwing around the word fascia finally. And it gets really confusing where there's a fascia blaster, you're just kind of tearing through things. There's I know when I did functional patterns, the first 2 months is targeted fascial releases with like lacrosse balls. And as a hypermobile person, when my hips finally started crashing in my 50s, I realized that some of the fascial releases were setting me back. And I also realized I had to finally research several different breathwork things to realize you need to put the pressure back. You can't just take away tension. You need to construct a model that you want to execute, especially when it comes to something you're going to do every day. That's another experience that I had too, is I would get this idea that you could directly change walking. Oh, I'm going to walk this way. And that you could do the most destruction if you got the wrong idea about something that you do all the time. So I love in your course where you list, you're like, no, guys, these are 12 or so different views of how to manage the fascia. There's Ida Rolf and Rolfing, and there are all these different approaches. And then there were two that seemed to have inspired you the most. And then you thoughtfully designed something that someone could do every day. And I saw so many good things about it, guys. It's really affordable. It's something you can do every day. And then that you also offer Mighty Breath, because breath is the master repressurizer. 22,000 breaths a day. The diaphragm massaging the heart, it pumping the lymphatic system, and the calves being the second heart, and our movement being what pumps the lymphatic system, and our being a tensegrous and not a corpse. We have these tensegrous systems. You're definitely right where you need to be, leading us towards the ability to find power and peace and presence that we never did before. And I love that you have specifically addressed the stressors of performance. Your story, you had this repetitive thing that you could also benchmark against. Wow, in college or whatever, I would bonk at that 2-foot putt. And then later you're earning $80 when you mastered your nervous system to do the exact thing you couldn't do before, which I find another thing as a constant researcher, kind of like yourself. Well, also learning by horrible crashing, awful failures. I love also the idea of having it tied to science, tied to something outside of myself, some baseline, something bigger than me. So I don't just follow my existing patterns into a bigger failure than I needed to. So where did you find? So you found in yourself, like you heard these echoes of these different ideas, like and I want to congratulate you on an elegant divorce. I had a very elegant divorce. I had a very, oh my goodness, $1,000,
Yeah.
peaceful. It was very elegant. So I commend you on that. And yet you've been circling around building communities. You had a husband who was a doctor. You knew about all this stuff until you finally synthesized this into the most elegant package possible, because that's the other thing that happens is we get overwhelmed. These 20 other people are talking about fascia. Which is the most sustainable? Which is the most integrated? What can I actually do as a busy person? So what would you say, now that you've been at this a while, what would you say were some of those breakthrough, like and now that you've been working with more and more clients, what are some of those assumptions that are getting in the way? I suppose one is probably all the skeletons and models don't represent tensegrity. I think one of the first things is we don't have a mainstream idea of this gelatinous, fully interconnected thing.
How long do you want my answer to be? I I would say one of the main issues is that the IFAA has a poor definition of fascia, and I think it's partially the researchers and the doctor's responsibility to kind of iron out where we're going to draw the line. And it's kind of humbling because, like, I often say fascia is a triple helix collagen fiber network. Now, saying that it's collagen sets a boundary of saying, like, okay, so fascia is now collagen. And even when we look at the etymology of fascia, it's a very, very poor word. It means hatchet. And it came from the fact that, like, if you were a clan leader in the past, a hatchet had these little they had these crosses, and each cross represented a village that you had control over. And so when they opened the body originally, they saw that the webbing of the fascia looked like a bunch of little crosses. So it's kind of a shitty word. Like, we should really kind of question, and there's a lot of words like that still in our medical dictionary. Like, some of them, I forget the word right now. It starts with an M, and it shows you that there's veins that pump outside of the muscle. When you look up the Latin etymology, it means mouse is under the skin. So, like, fascia, I think, is kind of, bubbling things to the surface of, like, actually how interconnected are we grown? There's so much robotic and linear language. And I'm using a bit of John Sharkey's words in what I'm saying right now. He was quite an inspiration for me, a clinical anatomist out of Ireland. I love his mightiness. So it's like, if we cut open a bone and we look at the trabecular bone, it's in the same shape as fascia. But it's made of calcium. So when we really are looking at the body from a surgeon's perspective, you're ripping it apart. You look at the meniscus like a shock pad, which is just kind of crazy. And again, this is another example that John Sharkey used. I'm looking forward to training with him. I'm going to Cremona in May to just be in his field a little bit more. As a clinical anatomist, he's, I think, going to take my understanding to the next level. When we think of, like, a marathon runner, so I have my fingers here together, my knuckles, right? And the meniscus is only like a half inch, an inch, right? And we start to run. Imagine running a marathon for, like, a weekend warriors, a 7-hour run. And our bones are supposed to be, if we look at the body like a robot, how do we keep these bones from touching each other? We've never been able to create something as powerful as our meniscus. But it's because we keep looking at things as separate. And when you get into cadavers, when you cut the fascia webbing open, it's called invagination. And it's because we grow in layers. We grow like this lasagna on top of each other. So when we have this reductionist mindset of, like, oh, this is a densification within the fascia, let's rip it apart, and then we have to wait for the fascia to heal in order to get results, we're not really looking at it like a holistic structure. So the first wall for fascia to become a little more mainstream is the IFAA and the fascia researchers to come up with an actual definition. And for it to be received as an organ, it actually needs an outside boundary line. And there was this amazing woman that was talking one of the discussion panels at the Fascia Congress about, well, what if the skin is the exterior part of the organ? Because you need kind of like two walls. And I got to tell you, I've thought about it every day. I'm like, wow, what if the entire body is truly, because that's how we are grown. And for anybody that wants to get into the chronological formation of fascia, there is a book out there. It's one of the oldest. It's called The Endless Web. And it walks you through the embryology of how we are slowly molded and grown. Like without the fascia tissue, there is no liver cells to turn into a liver. There is no kidney cells to turn into a kidney. It is the web that holds all of the nourishment for these organs to be grown. And like even in our face, if you were to take out one muscle, you have to move like 11 different invaginations over. So it's when we think of, you know, the body from a surgeon's perspective, we're not thinking the proper way yet. We're more like gardeners. We grow this body. And the waters that are circulating within this body depend on the waters that we're giving back to it. So, I like to use this metaphor. If a surgeon was looking at a tree and said, okay, how are we going to make a forest of healthy trees like this? The way that we currently look at the body is we would take that tree, cut it down, pulverize it, dehydrate it, look at it under a microscope, and they would make these like abstract theories about like what's in it and what it needs from because of what's in it. And a botanist would go to a forest full of those trees and study what makes it healthy. They'd study the interconnectedness of the roots, the minerals within the soil, the mycelium network that's growing with it, the weather patterns that make them grow. They would study it in cycles and seasons. And I think that's the mindset that we can truly apply to the body. And when we start doing that, we see the body as a rhythmic instrument. It's a rhythmic instrument that depends on tension. So if the tension is fluid and balanced, we have an expression of health. If the tension is asymmetrical, we are going to have issues in our joints. So that marathon runner that's run the same miles on both knees, but they have an issue in the right knee and not the left knee, why does that happen? It's a problem with the tension. And it's probably not in the knee, it's probably in the foot.
And the foot and the hip, it's funny. First of all, I love that you said fascia is a shitty word. I hatchet. Let's talk about the hatchets, Brooke. And then to even go how far you have to the conceptual language around an organic ecosystem view of health, which is one reason I call this the architecture of health, is the building design. It's the angle of the sunlight. It's the flow of water. It's the drainage. It's how does the human come in and go out? It's the flow. There's so many things. And I'm an architectural engineering dropout.
Oh, okay.
Until
did you get into biogeometry yet? Have you?
I love geometry.
Okay.
And harmonizing. We can harmonize all of the energies, and this is an ancient science that modern time needs more. I'm going to have a guest in a couple of weeks on that one.
Oh, please send it to me because I lived in a teepee for a year. I did a bell tent for 6 months. I lived in like a wigwam, just like a screened wigwam for a summer when I was a kid. Always been called to sleeping under the moon and the stars. The joke in my family is I've never returned. There is something extremely powerful about sleeping in a circular or a pyramid like shape compared to a rectangular room. I never talk about this online, but it often does not lead me. There is no rectangles in nature. And when we get into stagnation, right? Stagnation of the body, when we have stagnation build up in the body, that's normally where disorder or disease is going to start to happen, right? Well, a house also has stagnation. And like air stagnation is a really big deal when we like think about it, but there's also electromagnetic like pockets of stagnation. And when you live in a circular structure like I did, it was ritualized to basically like, you know, make a fire and then sweep the house out in one direction with one opening. And I gotta tell you, it was the best sleep I've ever had still in my whole life. I've never slept like as good as I did in the teepee. Um, and there's something to that I think like removing yourself from an AC environment throughout the night, teaching your ears how to hear the nature sounds and not go into panic. Teaching your eyes how to handle true fucking darkness. Like it was unbelievable. 6 months into the TP experiment, I lived in it for about a year and 2 months. 6 months in, my night vision was unbelievable. My hearing was extraordinary. I could tell you the location of the animal that we would hear because we're right here by the Everglades. So like there was alligators, like, and you're tuned in to the breeding season. You're tuned into when the frogs are peaked, when there's a snake in the garden because the frogs stop singing. You're just dialed in, and indoors felt extremely artificial because I wouldn't get movement on my skin. So the wind, just after that much exposure to the outdoor environment, was part of my nervous system regulation. And then walking into an inside climate where there was no wind, there was no nature sounds, the light was kind of like chronically pulsating the same frequency. I think it really, there's more to how we have structured our our homes than we still gave credit for, truly.
And you've hit on so many things there that the the simplicity of going back outside is actually an incredibly rich sensory experience. And right now I am indoors. I've got a wide open window. I had a guest a couple of months ago talk. I didn't actually realize till then that all indoor light pretty much is toxic. Maybe an incandescent bulb, not so bad. But even having lots of windows around filters all the frequencies except blue light. And I'm glad I have technology to have you here with me today. I have my spectral filters, and yet the full knowingness of how organic and complex these systems are, and yet at the very same time how simple the solution is: be outside. Be outside more. Now I wanted to say too, I loved how you talked about life being rhythmic, the body as a rhythmic instrument. It depends upon tension and fluid. You also had one of my favorite sound healing. You had an interview with one of my favorite sound healing guests as well.
Oh,
So frequent.
Terrence,
Yes. Well, I
the
can't.
throat, was he a throat singer?
No, actually, I can't remember. It's a woman who
Okay.
she has a book about biotuning that I also am a
Oh,
fan of.
Eileen McKissick.
Eileen,
Okay.
yeah. So you're tying together the harmonics, that these harmonics exist personally in our immediate environment. They exist in our culture, and restoring these harmonics is this ecological view of the body where you found better and better ways to restore the tension and restore the fluidity. You one thing that's different about your fascial approach is looking at all of these layers in the body, and I use the word lasagna quite a
Yeah.
bit rather
Nice.
than just destructively. You're just going to cut into it. You're massaging it and moving the fluids around. You're using the breath to move the fluids around and regulate the heartbeat. So what is it that, and what I'm telling my audience is that you can trust Brooke's work. You like, I there are a lot of people I would not follow. I would not do what a lot of these fitness influencers are saying to do, because you'll do it for a week and then nothing, you won't really know if anything is happening. But just wow, the depth of your knowledge and research and your reverence for our design. So as far as these obstacles people have, well, I propose that another obstacle is just all this. There's just too much information. There's just there are just too many ways people can do things, and then there aren't enough daily habits. There isn't enough reverence for something that we do all the time, like breathing or wearing our shoes or walking with bare feet on the ground. What else would you care to say that you've noticed helps people have a breakthrough where they really commit to investing in restoring their mightiness?
Without a doubt, it's their pain. Unfortunately, there's. I would love for younger and younger kids to find me because we could keep them from the joint pain. But I find that what drives people to find me is they wake up one day and their knee hurts and they can't train the way that they have. A lot of pro athletes find me when they've retired for a couple years and they're not done. The competitive soul within them is still very fired up, and they know where their issues are, and they'll kind of describe things. And I'm like, that's great. We're going to start at your feet. I don't care that your shoulder hurts. It's probably something in your glute. It's probably something in your hamstring. And that's become a very difficult thing to harp on in the beginning. And I'm noticing now that I've said it so much that people come to me with like, I get it. We're not going to touch the shoulder, but, and I'm like, yeah, fine. I finally have said that enough, I guess. I'm very excited. I have a model that is in progress of being built, and it'll be 4 months from now. I'll be the first one in the world with this particular model that I think would really, it'll help all of us understand that we're in a tuning peg system. So, like, I think part of our issue too is that we have done a great job at creating dependencies, even in the wellness culture. So, pharmacology has built a billions and billions of dollar industry by saying, hi, you have that problem. I have your fix. Come see me. I'm going to be your new drug dealer. And we have really conditioned our culture to just have one solution for all of these problems. So, like painkillers, they work for your knee and your shoulder because they numb your entire brain. So I'm not going to ever compete with somebody who still enjoys that solution, because mine's, the con of my work is you actually have to train it and nobody can do it for you. It only takes 18 minutes to make some serious progress 5 days a week. But if you want that, I'm not going to be your solution, because I'm going to require more out of you than just popping a pill. I think the other issue is getting people to understand that the lower body and upper body are connected. So when people are, looking for shoulder pain, they might not be interested in my ground up treatment, yet a lot of my clients really experience a significant change in their upper body just by treating the hips down. And I do cover the full body in my course. I lock it. And then I'm like, okay, you have to email me. I have to have documentation that you say that you're ready. I'm going to indicate, because you can't hurt yourself. That is definitely why it has been protected by therapists for the last 100 years. If you release some of the major fascia bands around your spine without consideration for the tension in other parts of your body, you will do what I did to myself. And that's apply my technique to my shoulder. And then, oh, you did it too? Yeah, everybody does it. I say it so much too. I'm like, listen, I am trying to save you. But I couldn't look right for 6 weeks.
Okay, I got to pause here because that's what. Oh, okay. This is so juicy. We have a reductionist mindset. We have a pain in our shoulder, so we want to go to the shoulder, bad shoulder, local solution to a global problem. It's a global problem because everything, somewhere we're making contact with the ground force, somewhere we're pushing into the ground to be upright. And that entire communication system with our nervous system, our breath, all of our the hundreds of thousands of nerve endings in our feet, the millions in our eyes, that's where we get it way wrong, is this local idea that pain is the solution to pain is never ever where it shows up. It's never, the problem and the solution are completely different things. And the thing is, the pop culture idea of fascia, even when I went to a very well trained fascia release person, I did my Rolfing back in the 80s. I loved it. It was a very highly trained person, very expensive process. I loved it because they had a method to it, and it always started with, and yeah, they had a method to it. I had positive results. But then when I was like, this is too expensive, I'm going to do my own releases, my hips, I would get a crash so bad I couldn't walk. Because even if I followed a protocol someone on the internet had designed that said, almost all of you people that sit in chairs, if you do things in this order. And the problem was, if you don't have the feet on board, you don't have the lower body, you don't have anything. I finally have, and not that that's everything, but now I tell people I will not guide anyone to do releases near where there's a problem, because that's dangerous. Anything you want to add to this?
It's funny because I mean, most fascia release techniques out there kind of overlook the feet. So I don't want to like give people fear because a lot of the fascia releases out there don't get very deep either. You know what I mean? Like if they're using a wide surface area, you're only releasing the top levels, which is actually probably fine for a lot of people who just want a little bit of movement. And that's what I'm always trying to say is like my frame is different. Like as a athlete, as a touring musician and a professional athlete, I tore scar tissue so deep that the standard protocols that are out there don't penetrate the damage that I had did to the deep fascia from repetitive movement, from dehydration, from being on a golf course full of glyphosates. Um, we some people we have to scrub deeper. So like I really love the melt method. And I feel like people that have fascia sensitivity, lymphedema, like I'm quick to say, try these other methods. They're gentler. They're not going to get as deep into the body. My method is built for deep fascia penetration to activate the fiber sites. And so everybody designed their method really around usually like an injury. So like Gary Lyman of Human Garage, he had a torqued belly button. So all of his twisting and torquing, which by the way I can't do because of my I have only 5 vertebrae in my spine, something from birth. So my tension
In your lumbar,
itself
hold on, in your
in my
lumbar, in your
cervical.
cervical.
Yeah, I'm like a lion. I only have 5 vertebrae. I have a fusion that happened when I was younger, not surgically, but in the womb, I guess. So Gary Lyman here, he like fixed his issue that created so much release for him, and it's helping a bunch of people. And his technique is very different than me, and I don't appreciate that he gives away so much free stuff because it undercuts every single person in the industry. And so I've had a lot of people reach out and they're just like, oh, well, they do this. And it's like, that's great. I don't know how he's making his money. Like I have a
Can we
$30
pause on
offer.
this? Okay, I want to pause here. First of all, thank you for taking the fear mongering out. Yeah, my crashes are because I go deep. I have athletic goals. I go deep. I'm a movement person. This is what I love more than anything else. And so, yes, please. I love like these
Yeah.
lightweight methods. Beautiful. And I want to go deep because I want to be running much faster in the next 20, 30 years. I want to be winning sprints against my grandchildren someday, and I don't even have them yet. So here's what I wanted to also pause on is I gotta admit, this beautiful thing about Instagram is it's my happy place. Like all the inspiration I get, all this great info, I'm always learning something new. It's like it's the most beautiful community with all these different people that have high hopes for how well we could all be. At the same time, it's a race to the bottom, everybody giving everything away.
I have
Um,
strong opinions about, discounts make for sad business owners. And if you provide great value and you love your clients, I'm in this for the long run. I have been in so many different careers that I feel like finally I've maybe found my place in the world, which has been funny for my family because I have an international business degree. My thing for 10 years was like, wow, I never even used my degree because I've been doing all these different things. And now I'm like, oh shit, maybe it all made sense in the scheme of things now that I'm 35 and have an international business. So I always just I want to be here for people in the long term. I could really see I love what I'm doing. I love where it's bringing the clients. I really like my niche that I've focused in on the adrenaline response and leveraging adrenaline, the conversations that I get to have with some of my clients. Like I have some incredible clients that I really believe are the movers and shakers in the world. And not all of them athletes or artists. Some of them are businessmen that have really pushed their nervous system for 9 or 10 years. And they have this kind of constant frontal lobe clamp, is what I call it. It's like they wake up in the middle of the night and they're already forward pressed into, I have to do. And so to change their rhythm and sequence is the same what I do to an overworked artist, to an overworked athlete, and helping thought leaders and other beacons and people that want to be mighty. That's my love spot. And I do think there are some influencers out there that are providing decent material. I think everybody's kind of overlooking the ground up structure. Um, And as a harpist, like I play 7 instruments, and I brought this up and then I lost my train of thought. When you have a harp, when you tune any instrument, you tune one side. So when we talk about tension through the body, right, we have 8 major fascia bands running from the bottom of us to the top. And that little old man that we see walking down the street that's like this, he has a tension issue in his superficial back line. His front line is more tight and tense than his back line. And when we get outside of the muscle world and we start relaxing our brains around these industrial strength rubber bands that are holding our posture into place, and we think like a harpist, we don't have to tune the entire body. We have to tune just little pieces of it and let the posture pull itself into position. And I love a good therapist, but no one can afford therapy 5 days a week unless you're loaded, which more power to you. Have a great time. The rest of us need to learn how to use a ball like a toothbrush. We need to learn how to use just a prime tool that simulates an elbow to get into the deep fascia in a routine that activates the fiber sites. And that's why my course is behind a paywall. If I came out with just the little bit of the sequence, people would apply it to their pain spots and hurt themselves. So I tell people all the time, I'm like, I charge the price of one massage. It's just one massage to learn the baker's recipe. You can use every tool you have. But these tools, like I'm doing this because So Right just sent me like an enormous box of tools that I get to play with. And tools are great, but without a sequence, the tools may literally not work well. Like if you're dehydrated and you're laying on a compression tool, you're not doing yourself a service. If you didn't warm up before it, you know what I mean? And it's in this understanding of what actually makes the fascia fluid, and then how do we tell if our fascia is loose or dense? And that is a very, very overlooked topic. So if you're hypermobile and you ever had a surgery, you are put in the box of one of the most complex cases, because loose fascia should be treated differently than dense fascia. And people that have hypermobility or EDS, they end up on opposite sides of the spectrum. And without a underlying knowledge of what makes our fascia flow, the fluid around it, the fluid inside it, what those need to be nourished, it's just a tool. So I think that, I hope to supply the education that lets people use a lot of these beautiful tools that are out there more intelligently, so that there is just kind of immediate and effective releases being happened, instead of like somebody's trying to fight a migraine with a tool that they use on their occipital lobe because it gives them the release for 10 minutes, but then it doesn't really work, doesn't really go anywhere. And like, that's been the incredible thing about the fascia flow, is watching people, like my astigmatism is gone now. And I've had clients say that to me, and I wouldn't have believed them unless it happened to me. And the eye is made of collagen. So let's just pretend you have a body full of collagen. You have perfect posture. And then I grab your lower hamstring, the major fascia bands that work there, and then I twist it. And then what's going to be the effect through that whole right side? Eyeball shape actually change from that. What happens through the hip joint and the knee joint? So how simple are a lot of these things, when we start considering fascia tension?
Wow. Oh, Brooke, I just love everything we've talked about. I could talk to you literally all day, but you're shaking and moving. You're making the mighty world more harmonious, one breath at a time, one fascia, one hatchet at a time. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, all right. It's funny to think of it as hatchet, isn't it? You're like, oh no, we're not there yet. All right.
And it's funny, the word skeleton came from an Italian word that means something like dried, because they just took all these, when they would see a skeleton, it was all dried out. So this idea too, that we aren't hydrated, yummy, juicy things. Wow, Brooke. Okay, so we got to wrap it up. I'm actually going to go teach an African dance class.
Oh, that's fun.
Oh, it's so fun. Maybe one day you'll join me in Florida. We'll go to a teacher's class together. Okay, anyhow, so wrapping this up, you have two classes, Mighty Breath, Fascia Flow, and then you have higher level education. And audience, one thing that I applaud you on is you're listening to this podcast, you're getting educated. Education is a critical step. You just can't skip. Everybody wants to just be told what to do. But if you don't have some framework for guiding your decisions in the long run, everything will be a fad. You'll have, and you won't get to this possibility of these deep things like Brooke correcting her own astigmatism. Like the possibilities. I'm moving this tooth out. I'm changing my palate through movement. And so why I said that is really the cost of less than one massage. Not that there's anything wrong with massage. These tools that can be trusted and used consistently, so you have deep, trusted change. Those are on your website, Musical Breathwork. Is it .com or dot?
Musicalbreathwork.com. And I even have like a flagship course that covers basically everything. It's called the Brain and Breath Connection. It's only $30. I really thought that was going to be my only course. And then people demanded that I do walkthroughs of fascia flow and mighty breath. So somebody's like, I want to kind of understand my chronological approach. If you start there, um, really it's kind of got a lot of the pieces if you're a good note taker. And then I made the other ones out of strictly demand. And then I started getting too busy with private. So I made a membership library that has, I think, more than like 120 videos. It's got 60% more of the courses, but then I get to chat with everybody. So if someone has like a bit of a complex case, they want some guidance, I made that membership so that I could hit more people than just my 9 privates a week so that I could kind of coach them up. They have access to all my programs, all of the podcasts early. So I'm just trying to make it easy for people to take their sovereignty back. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a therapist. I'm just an athlete that looked for solutions. They've worked for hundreds of other people, so they're available online. And if this speaks to you, I would love to have you check it out. But the Brain and Breath Connection is only $30, and it's a really beautiful overview of how to start leveraging anxiety. We're never going to beat the stress loop, so it's about learning how to immediately navigate it when we have that triggered. You know, somebody cuts us off on the highway. How do we quickest respond? That's where I really focus on why breath rate and body tension are so important. You know, how to do a mighty breath, what it actually looks like, what a fascia flow is, what are the rules. I really cover it all there. So I try to make it as um, affordable and as relatable as possible. And then those courses are deep dives with real, you know, walkthroughs, tips, bonuses, lots of different things for people to consider. When you teach digitally, you end up realizing that every single question you get in a live class has to be in one of the modules. So they've been labors of love.
And what I like about the mighty breath and fascia flow is, you know, you're there even with your mom, and you show more than one way to do it. You have a timer. Mm-hmm. So those are very routine building, like enough science, but then in action. Because I know not everyone is like us, Brooke. Not everyone wants to read every single thing and compare 10 different functional systems. That's what I've done. I've spent the years comparing functional movement systems and taking a broad look at where are there commonalities and where are there intentional divergences. So, okay. So musicalbreathwork.com, lots of options, $30. Wow, that's less than a burrito, 2 burritos in California these days. All right, well, I can't thank you enough for your leadership, your building healthy communities, upping the standards for movement professionals, health through movement professionals, your elegance, your artistry, your generosity, your beauty. Thank you, Brooke.
I hope we do this again, Deb. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, I sure want to do it again. All right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.